On today's episode of the 1% Podcast, we're going to be talking with Neil Nelson, the president and CEO of ESI, Engineered Structures Incorporated, headquartered here in Meridian, Idaho. Neil has an amazing story from growing up on a ranch in Montana, losing his dad when he was a little kid, to ultimately growing and becoming the president and CEO of the largest privately held construction company in Idaho. ESI was recently named the number 146th largest contractor in the United States. A huge honor for them. They've done amazing things. He and his wife giving back to the community. So we're going to talk to him about his career growth, coming from essentially nothing to where he's at today, and about the steps that he took to get there, and then the things he and his family are doing to give back to the community now.
Hey, that talent, that skill set is aging out of the business. You know, we're destined to have increase in housing prices.
Sometimes that's learning what not to do, but in other cases it's, hey, I learned these things I really loved from this person. I learned these things I really loved and admired about this person. And
Neil Nelson, thank you for being here with us today.
You bet. Glad to be here. This is fun.
I was really excited to have you on because as we were kind of talking off camera, my goal is to be able to help paint the picture of how people become successful, right? Like not just how you're born the 1%, or, you know, they may see someone like you and be like, oh, I'm never going to reach someone like Neil's level of success, but really telling the story of where you came from and how you got there, and show that, you know, by following consistent patterns and habits and principles, that anyone can make it. And so I think that you're one of the best examples of that I know of. And so
yeah,
help tell the story. So
sure, I'm glad you do this, because there is a lot of people looking for that, you know, magic bullet.
Yep.
And sometimes there isn't one. Nope. And like, if I can do it, I think a lot of people can.
Yeah,
I'm a believer in that.
love it. So let's talk about that. Tell us about where you grew up, home,
Sure.
family, circumstances.
I'll give you the 2-minute version of it. Just the short version is, so I grew up in a large Catholic family. I was the youngest of 8. We grew up on a ranch. My dad actually, unfortunately, passed away when I was a baby. I was 8 months old. I think my oldest brother was 17. So kind of handed my mom, you know, the family more or less. At the time, she didn't have a driver's license.
Wow.
So we didn't have a TV. We just had a big ranch, and her whole thing was education. I mean, you know, we're blessed that we're all still alive, honestly, given how we were raised. You know, everybody has a college degree, several run their own businesses. And I think a lot of it comes back in hindsight to education and the work ethic. You know, we pretty much worked dark to dark is kind of what it was. Nobody was on a clock. You know, that was our environment, and sports. So those are kind of, you know,
ran cattle. Is that
we ran cows, horses, we had pigs, we had hay. We kind of did it all. I think at that time when I was growing up, agriculture and farming was like, everybody was trying something different to find is it grain, is it corn, is it cows? Like, where are you going to make your money? And again, like my mom was not, she wasn't raised that way. So it was like, she got handed a farm, and, you know, she stayed with it, till I was 15. And then she went back to college, you know, and I went into high school. So that's when we finally sold our ranch.
And you lived in Montana? That's where
Yeah, I grew up in Montana, out of a little town called Whitehall, but not in town, like 20 miles out in the sticks. And as hard as I worked as a kid, we used to look across the fence at the dairy guys and go, man, they work hard.
Yeah.
Dairy farmers, like, get after it, and there is no days off. So even as a ranch kid, I used to look at those guys and go, man, they just get no days off. And it was kind of watching that work ethic in farming and ranching that kind of said, man, if you applied that to business, where could you go with that?
Yeah. So your dad passed away when you were really little. You talked about obviously the ranch being a huge part of your life, but then sports as well. What did that kind of look like for you?
Yeah, I mean, that was kind of our way to get off the ranch. My mom was a competitive person, and, you know, we all wrestled and played football, and, you know, that was the one time that you could, like, not be working as if you were in your sport.
Yeah.
And in hindsight, when I look back, that's where I got, you know, the best mentorship from coaches and, you know, teammates and things like that. It's where you became part of a team. You saw how teams worked. You know, and I ended up wrestling in college and came to Boise State. So that was kind of the path that brought me to Idaho was, my wrestling career, honestly.
Yeah.
Even though I probably would have, if I had any size to me, I probably would have preferred to play football.
Yeah.
But, it's just kind of the way it worked out.
Bo ended up getting all the size.
Yeah, exactly. It's funny how that works.
So you talked about some of your coaches and people like that having an impact on you. Is there anyone specifically or people in your life, with your dad passing away so young, I'm sure having male mentors or other people in your life that you could look up to? And
Yeah, I had a couple. I mean, in my younger years, it was my older brother. I mean, just watching him work, and he worked at a mine on the wastewater side, so I got to kind of watch that, and really watch him make something out of nothing. And I still talk to him all the time. We're still good friends. So it was kind of fun to watch that, and really my whole family. I mean, just looking up to my siblings was a big part of it. I also had a ranching neighbor that was in the construction industry, that kind of mentored me a little bit, and I worked for him starting at about 12, and I, ended up kind of watching what he did in business as a business owner. So to some degree, it was that rich dad, poor dad side. I saw a guy that, was adamant that you don't work for anybody else, you work for yourself. That was a theme that he had. You always should work for yourself. Even if you're within a company, you should look at it like you're working, for yourself and your own growth and not a paycheck.
Yeah.
And the coaching side was, I blend the best out of all of them. I think the one thing I learned out of coaches is just really the accountability, the expectations, the self-discipline. Like, no one's going to do it for you.
Yeah.
And the kids that wash out, or the players that wash out, they did it to themselves. Yeah. There's varying degrees of tough coaches, soft coaches, but you just take the best of the mix. So, and I still follow a ton of coaches now to just look at different styles.
For sure. And it's interesting, as I interview more people and we sit down and we talk about this, like there are a number of consistent themes. So one of those is having the ability to recognize patterns, right? Like be able to recognize patterns in people that, hey, this neighbor, other rancher, business owner, person I'm learning from that has a construction company, this coach, this friend, this person, like you can go look, and the faster you can recognize patterns and incorporate those in your own life, the more successful you're going to be quicker, right? And so being able to learn from everyone and everything, and sometimes that's learning what not to do, but in other cases it's, hey, I learned these things I really loved from this person. I learned these things I really loved and admired about this person. And
yeah, for sure. And you watch, being part of winning teams and losing teams. Like, I think most successful athletes and business people look back on their career and they're like, hey, that was a really successful group. And some of it almost feels lucky that we all came together at that certain point in time. And, we happened to have this talented player and this type of coach, and it just all came together and we had an amazing season. But then other seasons you look at and say, well, we had all the right people. Why did we fall short? So some of it's, I can't put my finger on it, but I can tell you, when you do a certain portion of it right, you end up in the top third. And that's really, when you're on a team or a part of a group that's like, we're not going anywhere. And that's when you got to reset and say that this isn't going anywhere.
Yeah. So you come to Boise State, you come to wrestle, when earn a construction management degree, business minor, I believe.
Yes, correct.
Talk to us about your time at Boise State. What did you learn there? Obviously you're very connected to Boise State even still.
Still, yeah, it was awesome. My brother that's 3 years older than me was here already wrestling. I looked at other opportunities. I looked at Wyoming and different small colleges and stuff. But Boise State always felt like a good fit. Ironically enough, I think I was 18 when I came on my recruiting trip, but I ended up going to lunch with Alan Noble, and I still remember a day he was like telling me, excuse me, I have this little electronic chip thing that I'm doing. And if, when you get out of Boise State, you'll come to work for me there. And he was so confident and, just like, hey, you have all the right tools, you're going to get through Boise State and it's going to be a great experience. And then you're going to come to work for me. It wasn't like, I'll talk to you, I'll hire you. He was like, you're coming to work for me. And I remember thinking, this guy's already offered me a job and I met him like 15 minutes ago.
Yeah.
having known Alan, he probably gave that speech to 300 athletes, but it worked.
Worked out well.
I was like, yeah, I'll stay here because this guy's going to hire me when I get done.
Yeah.
And then having gone through Boise State, it was a super good experience. Again, that's where a lot of my network came from. That's frankly where, a lot of our employees came from that early on network, and we still have a lot of interns that are there.
Yeah.
So we've really never lost our connection there.
Yeah. So you talked about starting in construction a little bit when you were living in Montana as growing up. How did that kind of evolve as you came into Boise State? Did you know that that's what you wanted to do right off the bat, or how did that evolution kind of?
It was I kind of backed into that a little bit. I had some exposure in high school. I thought it was fun. I liked the physical nature of it. I liked feeling like, hey, we accomplished something today. When I came to Boise State, I had a roommate, Dean Hastrider, who ends up knowing your family super well.
Love Dean.
And so had a roommate and was looking for summer work. And, he treated his job like an athletic event, right? I mean, we went out there to work like it was the Olympics.
Yeah.
And I liked how that went together. And I liked, not being poor.
Yeah.
So I liked to check, trying to get off top ramen. So
yeah,
that was initially how I got into it.
Like, I make a lot of money pretty quick.
Yeah. And lots of hours, and really enjoyed it. There was a good team atmosphere, and I like the idea of productivity. That resonated with me really well. That, hey, if we do things more efficiently, we can actually do more work faster. But no, I wasn't set on that industry. I thought I would do engineering, kind of looked down that path a couple times. I think the one thing that I knew that was consistent and why I took my business degree as far as I did is just that I wanted to own my own business.
Yeah.
I at some point in my life, I was like, I'm not, I actually used to think that I was a bad employee because I would question everything I was told. And I used to go home at night going, I might be a pain in the neck to have as an employee. And as I matured, I was like, that's actually general good curiosity to have. Like, why am I being sent here to do this? So, that my mind was always like, I should probably be doing my own thing.
We jokingly say around here that I would be the worst employee ever. I would need a terrible. Right. So you kind of knew that, hey, this is where I want to go eventually. But talk about building a skill set, right? Like you're getting experience going through school. I tell people all the time, like, I don't care about degrees. Seems like most other people that I know that are in your position or mine really don't care about degrees. It's what's the skill set.
For sure. It's
what are you learning? What are you gaining?
It's getting reps in, right? It's like anything else. Yeah. Like, I don't think you're not going to be a good kicker out of the gate if you don't get reps in. So if you correlate it to sports, you don't really see anybody amazing. You see people that adjust and have the physical build to do it, but did they get enough reps in to get really, really good?
Yeah.
And that, varying degrees of that. Well, I think work is no different. I think you have to get good at something. And, for me, it was like, I wouldn't say I ever got great at concrete, but I certainly knew enough, right? I could grab every tool there and do something with it. I could run equipment. I was very comfortable getting in the seat of a backhoe and ripping around. I mean, I got good enough in all of that when I took it into the management side, then I understood what we were doing. Like, I understood, that was going to take 5 people a week. Like, that resonated with me of like, I could immediately estimate because I could understand the scopes of work and how long things were going to take.
Yeah. So how long did it take before you went to work for ESI?
Yeah.
What did that kind of next phase of your?
I kind of had a 2.5-year path where I went to work for a larger company that was joint venture with a smaller company, did kind of the entry-level field engineering stuff. Yep. I got the chance to be a part of Micron's big build in Lehigh in the mid-90s. So it's hard for me to say it was 30 years ago because it does feel like yesterday.
It's crazy.
But it was exciting, and it's fun to see it come full circle to what's going on out there now. So I got to be a part of that, and that's where I really kind of said, hey, this is my chance to be in the industry and like own it. And so that's when I kind of just said, I'm going to work. And work at that point was like dark to dark. Like, I just said, okay, I'm here for 2 to 4 years or whatever. And if it's 60, 70 hours a week, and I think in Lehigh, we were paid 60, 60, 40. So we were actually paid 60, but we worked probably 65 to 70. each week. And then we would get our 40 week, which kind of gave you a Thursday, Friday off to have a weekend. So I did that for quite a while, and that was really enjoyable. And then I came back to when that shut down, because they pretty much stopped that site overnight. I mean, I had about a 30-day ramp down where we went from 3,000 or 4,000 craft on site to 300 within 30 days. And I was one of the last people there. I was probably like number 150 that left, and came back here, and I had a good friend that was at ESI and kind of pulled me over, and that was coming up on 30 years ago.
So what would you say were some of the major benchmarks as you grew in the company, obviously now to being the president CEO, from starting out in a relatively entry level to where you are today? What did that look like for you? And what are some of the things that, looking back, hindsight now, you're like, hey, that was a key step. That was a key opportunity.
Yeah, there was several steps, right? I mean, when I went there, there was 14 people. So, my office was in a hallway. I took a door and hung it on the wall. That's when my phone was still a phone and had a cord attached to it. But that was my plan table, and just set it up in a hallway. So, for me, the benchmarks that stand out are usually around, projects and people, like when we hit certain numbers of employees, or when we, finally won a contract, where it was like, okay, that'll put us in a different, people will look at us differently if we win this contract. And I would say that was probably the first 10 years of my career of like, oh, we finally hit whatever milestone, and we finally won this type of work, and people will look at us differently. I would say in the last 15 years, it's been more cultural milestones where, like, you see people celebrate their 20th anniversary, or you see people that you've worked with and their kids now work for you. They're working in the business. It's more of that stuff where that seems to be the excitement of it. I mean, I still pay attention to the numbers, obviously, and the special projects. We're building the Home Depot in Caldwell, and I worked on our first Home Depot in 97. And the one we're building in Caldwell will be number 100. We're building two. We're building one in Caldwell and one in Buckley, Arizona. But that'll be a milestone for the company to build 100 Home Depots.
Yeah, no, that's a big deal.
And there's about 5,000 cubic yards in a Home Depot. So, like, when you think of that over time across probably 20 or 25 different states, it's definitely a big milestone for the company.
Yeah, no, that's a huge deal. Growing to where you guys are now, like neighborhood, like 1,000 employees or something like that.
Yeah, just over.
Growing from 14 people. What are some of the key changes that you've seen come about in the company, or that you guys have brought about in ESI? You talked about the cultural change, but like going to like self-performing some of your own craft. You guys started performing your own concrete work was about 13, 14 years.
Yeah, it was about that time when we'd always kind of dipped in it a little bit, but never got super serious about it. Until we, kind of started looking at the workforce and the shortage of it. We ran some demographics on our superintendents and realized that, hey, that talent, that skill set is aging out of the business. And it was about 15 or that time frame years ago when we said a lot of our best people are getting to be in their 60s, and we're going to age out if we don't do something. And we got this concept of we should start growing our own. And it wasn't new. I mean, the industry's tried to do that for years. We just tried to do it a little differently, and started in, really concrete and electrical is kind of where it started. And now I think our craft base is close to 600 people in the craft side. And craft can surge and drop, and, there's definitely, across my 30-year career, there's low points too, right? I mean, 3 or 4 different types of recessions, where you scrounge for anything to do. And, we learned in the recession, the main recession that kicked off really in 07, 08, we needed to offer our customers something different. I mean, we needed to have a value and not just be, a general contractor. We needed to actually do stuff.
Yeah.
And that's kind of one of the things that helped us weather the storm, is like having a little bit of that. And we decided, hey, that was good for us. We should do more of that.
And how do you feel like that's helped you guys to be able to control your schedules, your quality, so the things, and certainly grow your own talent pool and the people within your...
I would say the biggest benefit is that talent pool is to be able to, start someone off as a laborer and watch them grow.
Yeah.
And we call it 6 figures, no suits, where people have come through that side where they came to us literally as a laborer. And now they're well into the six figures, and they don't wear a suit, and they've really worn boots through their whole career path. Now they might be walking around in a collared shirt with an iPad in their hand, but they're in some type of leadership or a director role, and they do really well for themselves financially.
Yeah.
And that so to look at that path to be able to come from a laborer and to work your way up. In fact, I just met a kid in the lobby that just graduated from lineman school, and I said he kind of got sick of traveling, and has a good path, really smart, good communicator, has his stuff together. 21 years old. I'm like, this is going to be a good place for you. You're going to do well here.
Yeah.
And I can confidently say that. I mean, our program is set up where, it's a partnership, right? I mean, they have to do their part and we have to do our part, but that partnership can work out really well if everybody delivers.
Talk about that skill set that you look for when you hire people. I have something that, I say that we hire people, we don't hire resumes.
Yeah.
So hiring someone and some of those skills and things that you look for, and then, hey, you can teach them everything they need to know. But what are some of those things that you look for that you can tell? Hey,
yeah. I mean, we kind of model the ideal team player a little bit, the humble, hungry, smart. The smart thing can mean a lot, right? I mean, when you look at our VDC and BIM group, I mean, we hire some physics majors that are just really good with adapting to software and tech. They're not necessary. They never even thought they were going to be in a construction company. But we know if they knocked it out of the park in math and physics, and they're really good with software, we can show them a model and teach them the system. Especially if they have some aptitude for being a team player. If they were in athletics or in the military, then it's like, ding, 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 that person might fit in around here. So depending on the path, I mean, I think we're always looking at athletes in military because it's kind of, our industry assimilates to both of those things. So if you performed athletics at a high level, you were hurt, you were sick, you were injured, you had to come back, recover, you were part of winning team, losing teams. And somehow you survived. You became really good at time management, self-discipline. You got yourself healthy because you wanted to compete. Same with the military. You were bored. You were sent on missions that didn't make sense. You didn't get a lot of direction, but you understood the chain of command. So you just, but you also worked hard. That seems to really fall in line with our industry. I mean, so we've kind of embraced those two aspects and said, hey, if you come in with, not necessarily the right paperwork, but this is the background, then, you're probably going to be successful.
Yeah. So for someone that may not know what they want to do, maybe it's someone that went to lineman school,
For sure.
doesn't know anything at all. They graduate from high school and like, I don't know what career path is best for me. And, what are you guys looking for? And what would you say to someone like that to consider?
Yeah. I mean, I think, this is what I tell my kids too. Like, if you're out there trying to figure out what to do, start by elimination. Like, start taking things off the table that you don't want to do. Okay, I don't want to be a firefighter. Okay, I don't want to work for Parks and Rec. I don't want to be in the insurance game. Whatever that is, just look at industries first and say, I don't want to be part of that industry. That's not an industry that would like resonate with me.
Yeah.
Take that off the table. Then once you say, okay, I think I would fit in this industry, then start looking for that right company. And say, okay, what does company A versus company B offer? And, I mean, when you study organizational behavior and just employee behavior as a whole, there's certain things that an employee is going to, that's going to resonate, that I call it the hope, trust, and stability. I mean, what are we hoping for? Do we trust them? And what is the stability factor? Well, construction is not stable, right? So we try to offer something, that is stable. We try to set up a company that is not seasonal. We try to set up a company that's geographically diversified and work-wise diversified so that there's always something to go build, and try to add that stability factor to all our employees. So I think when, employees come in the door, those are the types of things they're looking at. And you can see the switch flip when they go to, oh, I thought I was coming in to talk about, a construction company or this project or this building. That's not really what it's about. It's about building a career somewhere that you can, stay with.
It seems like you guys have done a masterful job of building a culture that people want to be a part of. If you don't mind, maybe kind of share with us about that, the things that you guys focus on, what you do. Obviously, your new office you just built is beautiful, but you guys do a great job, your social media content, all those sorts of things of connecting with your people. But what have you kind of found, and maybe a few examples, if you don't mind, of things that you guys have really put a focus on
Sure.
building that company culture?
Well, I mean, like anything, and I think all leaders do this. I think you do it well. I mean, the culture is made up of different components, right? And there's lots of ways to skin that cat. I mean, we all know good coaches, and we've all watched it close. And you're like, what is the culture at this team? And it's a point in time thing, right? Culture is a living, breathing thing where if you're not on it today, it can change. And you get, one toxic teammate and it can change. So I never take it for granted that our culture is a static thing. Like it's alive. And if you're not on it and addressing it every week and talking about it and being proactive and intentional, it can get away from you. And you see it in football teams, right? You see a team that's predicted to be in the top 10 mid-season, they're 500 and you're like, what's going on? And it can be one injury or it can be, a bad loss. Yeah. Whatever it is. Or you can see that like, hey, they pick up 2 marquee players and they're amazing, So, that's how I look at it too, is like, you're always looking for marquee players that can drive culture. I would also say, if you start with the core objectives in mind, whether, I don't know, everybody kind of has their own thing. I mean, for us, we're very much customer centric. Like we're a service business. I mean, we build stuff, but we're absolutely in the service business. So if you don't focus on your customer, you don't really even know where to start with your culture. Well, if your culture is customer centric, then you start driving things, from that angle, and you look for people that, can adapt to that, and not necessarily, if you're only focused on yourself, it's hard to be focused on the customer. So you have to be pretty unselfish in that process. So when you combine that work ethic with being unselfish, and that it's clear on the grease board what we're going after, and like, this is how we're doing it, people get in a line pretty fast. And so I don't want to say it's easy, but like if the objectives are clear, smart people figure it out, and then you don't have to actually dictate a lot of the pieces of it. But I do believe in, you talk about our new building. I mean, I'm a believer that, you got to have a good weight room. I mean, you've been recruited, you've been a part of teams. There's a reason, you go into certain facilities and you're like, I'm impressed. So that was kind of my goal. I had all my kids have played college athletics. 2 of them went on a lot of recruiting trips, and we saw a lot of weight rooms. We saw a lot of student facilities. We saw a lot of stadiums, and kind of watching that like culture across the country. I mean, I'm talking everywhere from Dartmouth, which couldn't be farther from here, to San Diego, right? I watched the whole span of facilities and approaches and how different universities address it, and and you got to have a good weight room. I just believe that. I'm not specifically saying you got a weight room, but you've got to have facilities. And for us, that's, BIM and innovation and tech and IT. It's the whole gamut. The backbone of a business. You got to have the right components in there. I mean, we have not unlike you, I was kind of checking out your facility here.
Yeah.
You got to have the best, right? I mean, you don't want to be in a,
Your facility has to match your culture.
mm-hmm. Yeah. And it has to say something about you. So for us, that's, we were intentional about our facility of what we wanted to communicate to our employees. So we have a cafe, we have an innovation center where we're just trying to drive technology and look at AI and look at applications for innovation. We're horrible at it as an industry. I mean, our construction is not known for their R&D. So we're trying to, do some of that on our own.
Which creates a huge opportunity for those that want to, right? Like that's been an area where we've found a lot of opportunities. As we talk about innovation, integrity, and impact. Those are like 3 of our core values. And okay, how can we innovate? How can we find smarter, faster, better ways of doing things, more efficient ways of doing things? And then we found the more that we bring those to our clients, like people are standing in line to want to do business with you because you're making their life better.
Absolutely.
Right. How have you guys found him, not necessarily specifics, but just that focus on innovation, that focus on doing things differently than just, hey, construction's an industry that's very much known for this is the way we've always done it, but that's the way we're going to keep doing it, right? Like you guys have obviously been very innovative in the way that you've done a lot of things. And
I mean, it's tough. By and large, we're a tactical industry, and we do things a certain way. I mean, our productivity and our estimates are put together based on our tactics that we use and our productivity rates and how we do systems. We're always looking for efficiency within those systems, but it isn't always there. And, like I told you earlier, some of what we do is, we did it the same way 30 years ago. When we set forms, it's slightly better materials, systems. The innovations come on the engineering side and some of the products we use. But the labor impact is still a little bit cavemanish. And so we're always looking for ways to do that. The sharing of information has gotten better, maybe in the last 10 years, but specifically in the last 3 years, the use of drones. We just did a super cool thing at Micron where the spreader bar actually, it is electronically controlled. So imagine a spreader bar with a drone on each end. And so it can adjust to the wind. So we're hanging EFIS panels in 30 mile an hour winds or 25 mile an hour winds, and we could eliminate 150-foot tag lines. It's about as innovative as you can get in construction in my mind. We took the wind out of it, the process, and we're still hitting our production numbers. And again, that was a field-driven initiative. That wasn't something that someone in the office said, "Hey, we should look into this." It was somebody boots on the ground going, "There's got to be a better way. We're not gonna hit our schedule if we keep doing it this way." So that curiosity component of like, there's got to be something better. And I find that with myself and my kids, the difference at the way they use tech versus the way we use tech. So I think drones, software, engineering, the information sharing, the layout aspects of it have all gotten better. I mean, just look at the curb machines we buy from you.
Yeah.
We're basically stringless, right? That was always a big part of what we do. Yeah, it's pretty neat. And the other thing that's impressive is the accuracy of it. The data we get back is definitely more real time. But again, I think our industry is still playing around with a lot of bleeding edge stuff. And, we have a group that looks at that kind of stuff. I wish we could carve out more time and better people to look at it, but you're always dealing with today challenges and productivity.
I think that example you just gave shows a lot about your culture just inherently in that story, right? Where someone in the field felt empowered to think of new innovative ways of doing things. I'm guessing somehow ran it up the chain of command. There was a team in this buy-in and people felt empowered to be able to make changes and to share new ideas. So many companies don't do that, right? Like, number one, people in the field don't even think that way. Number two, they wouldn't feel empowered to even pass up the line and then a change actually getting made. It's like, oh no, everything that happens here changes from the top down rather than, changes coming from people all over the organization.
Sure. And I wish it was, I can't sit here to say and every idea gets ran up and fixed and like innovated. I wish it was more such that way. And we're trying to create that conduit of information share up and down the chain. It's getting better though. I mean, I think our industry is getting better. I see more peer groups sharing information. I see people sitting around with suppliers, chatting about different ways to do things. I think we're trying to embrace, AI to some degree. And really the product innovation is getting better where we're seeing some systems that, cut the time literally in half. I'm still pretty skeptical on robotics. I've seen different machines. I mean, we've used some of the machines that are going to replace the mason, and I've watched that. I've seen robotics do drywall. Still a little skeptical. I mean, will it happen in my lifetime? You bet it will. Are you going to see it downtown Boise next year? Not a chance. I mean, there's still so many kinks to be worked out in some of the robotics elements. I mean, layout is much better, but the actual replacing the craftsman, that's got a ways to go.
Yeah. One of the things that I've noticed and as I've kind of formulated my opinions on this, that, for the next probably at least 5 years, there'll be a significant opportunity for people that want to be able to use AI to assist in, I guess, maybe what we may call like computer technology driven tasks, where you're doing takeoffs, you're doing calculations, you're, building models or other things like that. It's like AI could be a really, really powerful tool for doing things like that. Replacing labor out in the field, I don't see that happening in at least the next
For a
few
while.
years.
Yeah.
But using it as a tool to help streamline and create efficiencies and other things like that we're doing, there are massive opportunities for people to be able to take advantage of that and to create more value for themselves.
Yeah. And I think the challenge in an organization like us is we've seen some bright spots, right? We did some massive industrial work in the last couple of years. We did a big tilt building with, I don't know, it had like 1,800 embeds. We missed one. I mean, that was unheard of 20 years ago. We really, struggled with that component of layout. When I say embeds, some of them weigh 400 or 500 pounds, right? The building was within, a quarter inch and 1,300 feet, like just absolutely spot on. As good of layout and engineering as you could possibly get, in my opinion, within those tolerances. Getting that kind of quality to go with the whole organization is difficult because a tilt up is one thing, but multifamily is something different, wastewater is something different. So to take that, what we consider almost like a case study and then integrate it across the whole company is like, how do we get that, what we did so well over here, to lay out and be perfect over here?
Yeah.
And that's why Micron's been fun, because of the BIM and the VDC aspect of it. I mean, there's so many challenges out there, but that's at the top of the list of how do we get tech and engineering to play together so that we can actually be productive in the field, because there's so much going at once.
Yep. You're someone that came from essentially nothing and rose to the position where you're in. You are around a lot of high achieving people all of the time, right? People in your own organization and people that you work with and clients that you work for. Talk about the patterns or things that you've incorporated in your own life and that you've seen in other people that become really high achievers. What are things that you've done and things that you've recognized that other people do really well that have helped them to get there?
Yeah, I mean, I think my assessment of that, I'm just going to call it leadership as a whole. You have to have a really good system around you. I don't think anybody does it by themselves. The really successful people, you've met my wife. I mean, it's, our whole family structure is really, set up for success. She's extremely smart, good leader, good public speaker. I learn a lot from her. And so when you have that kind of partnership at home, it makes it easier to come to work and be the right kind of leader.
Yeah.
And when I meet,
Make more than any other demographic, right? So like,
yeah,
married, if you marry the right person,
huge
impact on your life.
And, just the other night we went out to dinner with Matt Bauer and Lindsay and Bauscher and Lindsay. And it's cool when you meet other people that are similar, where that structure, it's not a coincidence that typically plays out. So, I think you got to start there. You got to start with, taking care of yourself, at home, physically taking care of yourself. I get up at 5 a.m. and work out. Or I don't have a good day at work. If I don't get up and get an hour in, it doesn't really matter what that hour consists of. I got to have that, before I can come to work and make good decisions, is how I look at it. I think spiritually is a component of it too. I think you got to be in a good mindset, or at least at peace with yourself, whatever that looks like. So all of those things kind of add up to where, okay, now I can go attack my career.
Yeah.
And, that when I look at other really, really good leaders and, study that leadership aspect, there's lots of ways to do it. There's lots of ways to do it. There is some consistent themes around discipline, accountability, always being curious. I mean, I never settle for, the plan. I'm always thinking about like, what's going to lead this company next. To the point I semi-obsessive about it. I mean, there's definitely times where it's hard to turn off because you're just obsessed about, what's next in your industry. So, I think for me, that curiosity turned into not necessarily, and I think this is where a lot of people get it wrong. When they're talking about building a skill set, they get really good at building their skill set, but I think you have to move that skill set and be intentional about your network. And if you really want to grow your career path, you should always be gut checking that network. And that can start in junior high. Like, who are you hanging around with? That is a big, big deal. And so when I look at like who I consider, my peers and who I hang around with, I mean, that has to be the best leaders in the community. That's who I want to spend my time with. So, I think it was probably, I was just having a conversation with some of the Boise State athletes, and they said, well, what was your secret of making the jump? It wasn't really a secret, but it hit me like one time. I said, listen, I don't know some of the best leaders in the community. And if I want to dominate in Idaho, shouldn't I know these people, whether it's the CEO of Idaho Power or Intermountain Gas or the governor, or, so my network 20 years ago of who I thought I should know is different than it is now, but it's still always there of like, I should continue to reach out and maintain relationships at a certain level. And my idea of a relationship is not bumping into you at lunch and saying, hi, how you doing? I want to be close enough that I can text you and say, hey, I have this problem. I need some help. Hey, I heard you need some help. You want to be close enough where when you text, they text back or they call you right back and say, yeah, we should talk about that. Yep. So I only think you can do that. I think that's quantifiable where you can have that business relationship with how many people? Is that number 20, 25? It's different for everybody at any point in time in their career. But I think if you don't have that business network of around 15 to 20 people that are known, trusted business partners, then you're doing yourself a disservice. I mean, you got to at least have your circle at that level and be intentional about what that is.
Yep.
So it doesn't matter if it's banking, insurance partners, development partners, engineering partners, subcontractor partners. I mean, you need to know that group well, and you should be intentional about the time you spend with them.
I say to people all the time that you get paid on two things. You get paid on what you know and on who you know, right? It'd be your skill set and your network.
That's totally
you're one of the best examples of that I know of, and I've kind of modeled that after what I've seen from you and some others of building a powerful network is a powerful tool to have. And the more connected you are with more people, you can become the answer for other people's problems, right? Like I don't know how to do this thing, or I don't know this, or I'm not sure what the answer is to this. I'm going to reach out to Neil. And if Neil doesn't know, he's going to know someone that does.
Yeah.
And so being someone that has a powerful network is a very, very valuable tool and skill set to have.
And the other thing to keep in mind is the industry's small and the state is small. And I don't mean small in a geographic sense, but like the number of business leaders that care about the things I care about is probably under 50. I mean, there's certain things that my aspirations for Idaho 20, 30 years from now that I like to be around people that are looking forward to say, I want to make sure that my kids have the opportunity we have, and be thinking about those things. That's a pretty short list of people that are like, I would say unselfish enough to sit around and talk about that, and that's why I'll try to give my time to anybody that's like, hey, I'm kind of worried about where this is headed. Yep. Say like infrastructure, for example. I mean, where are we going with infrastructure, and what's our little part in that? And, you look at what Micron's gravitational pull to that end of the valley, and, the pull to the west and how the west is going to keep growing on this end of the valley. And then what does the in-between infrastructure looks like? Yep. You look at this freeway out here, it shuts down at the drop of a hat. That didn't used to be the case even 10 years ago. So, I think we need to plan around that. And I travel, you travel, you go to other cities that are not, they didn't think it through. They didn't do it well. Yep. That's why I like to talk about it when I get the chance to talk about it, because I want younger, smart minds worried about it. I think it should be on their mind. Of what are we doing about infrastructure?
Well, I remember running this last winter. You and I were both at a meeting with the governor and some other people. I mean, pretty small group of people talking about those kinds of things and about what that looks like. If you don't mind, what do you kind of see happening? What is kind of your outlook for Idaho specifically for the next 10, 15, 20 years? What are maybe some of the concerns that you have, and, just over the general outlook of, the opportunities? And obviously Idaho's an amazing place. The word is out, the secret's out, right? Like it used to be that people couldn't move here because there weren't jobs. COVID changed the world, and people can work from home now. And so that's brought a whole new wave of people coming to Idaho. But what's kind of like your general outlook for Idaho in concerns and the things you're excited about?
I mean, I'm generally an optimist, just because I've watched us weather so many storms,
Yeah.
and we're in a unique position from a tax base and from the cost of power, the availability of land. You know, we're pro business
Yeah.
in the state of Idaho, which is awesome.
Yep.
And so
People want to come here.
they want to come here. And so what we lack, and when I hear different businesses trying to relocate, is that workforce, and that's getting better all the time.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, you have to grow with caution, but I'm super optimistic about where things continue to head. I mean, you look at the data center push in Idaho. You look at what both healthcare systems are doing and expanding. That's going well. You look at there's just, you can't not sit here and talk about the impact of Micron and what that potentially could be. It's significant. I mean, and that's an understatement. I mean, it's going to be really polarizing.
People have any idea
that they don't.
long-term impact.
Yeah, they don't. And we don't see it because it's not under our nose, but INL is kind of a sleeper. I mean, what's going on for the Department of Energy and the potential down at that site and the growth on that end of the state is really good. I mean, we have an office in northern Idaho as well, and that the growth up there is kind of insane. It's a different type of growth, but it's really interesting
to live there for the quality of life.
Totally.
Beautiful it is.
So things are going to come to northern Idaho. And so, when you look at the state as a whole, there's so much upside, and there's a lot of really good potential here. Some things have to go right, but I kind of worry about the things that are, within my control. I don't lose a ton of sleep over what I don't feel like is within my control. I think it's generally kind of a waste of time. I'm not really plugged in on social media. I mean, I don't sit there and scroll and look for something, whatever the latest thing is.
You're a person of influence here, though, and people value your opinion. And just like, that opportunity when I had to sit in with Governor Little and talk about things and bring up concerns and things that we see in infrastructure is obviously one of those things that keeping up with the high rate of growth that we're having here, the freeway system, the ability to transport people to get back and forth. I know that's personally a concern of mine because your quality of life can diminish in a hurry.
Exactly.
Getting anywhere is really problematic. Right now, all of a sudden, people don't want to live here because it's a nightmare to get anywhere.
Yep.
And so I think the infrastructure issue is a real issue here in Idaho that we have to work through. And there's, a number of different possibilities how you solve that. But I think that the other thing is people used to be concerned about being able to keep their kids here because there weren't opportunities for them, right? So their kids had to go move away because there weren't jobs, there weren't opportunities, there weren't high-paying opportunities for people to stay here and build a career. Now that's not nearly as much the problem. People are more concerned now of, hey, are our kids going to be able to afford to buy a house, right?
Exactly.
Afford to live here long term, because people used to be attracted to Idaho, not just because it was beautiful and because of the outdoors and the quality of life and those things, but it was really inexpensive to live here, relatively speaking. Now that's not the case. And so what are you kind of seeing that way? And what would be your advice to people that maybe have the concern of, hey, I don't know if I'm going to be able to afford a home. My kids are going to be able to afford a home.
Right.
With increasing prices here in Idaho.
I mean, I don't see that changing a lot. I mean, the affordability of housing is it, like when you study other markets and other demographics, if we can hold on to the core of what's made Treasure Valley and Idaho, and we can keep doing those good things, we're almost, we're destined to have increase in housing prices. Like, I mean, people want to be at part of parks that are not filled with tents. I mean, that it's fundamental across the country. Like, people want to be in a place like this, or where my son lives in Charleston. They want that kind of, they want that lifestyle. They want, clean, safe neighborhoods. So that's going to automatically drive that affordability of housing, and it has to be addressed in a couple of different ways. And there's people out there working on that, trying to figure out a way to handle that. I mean, I think the other thing is it's all relative of expectations. There's still affordable stuff here. Like I always say, mountain home's the new eagle.
Yep.
Like if you just lift your head up and look around, there's still, a way to make it happen. I'm a big believer that mass transit has solved a lot of things for other communities. We're behind on that, but it's not lost. It could happen, and we should be talking about it more. We saw what it did to Utah, and they were able to connect different corridors in a different way. Really cohesive, several communities and cities were impacted, but they came together and got something done. That could happen. I mean, if you look at our rail system that goes right through town, right? It connects Micron all the way out west, boom, 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 right through several downtowns and close to housing. Um, you know, does it look like there's a play on that today? Not really. I mean, it would take, a really strong group of people to drive that, but it's very doable, and it could happen and should happen and take some pressure off our infrastructure.
Yep.
So I talk about it because I'm hoping someone listening would be like, you know what, that's possible. I mean, when I look at other cities that have created that loop, take Phoenix, for example. I was working down in Phoenix 25 years ago.
Yep. Love Phoenix.
And the loop was going, and everybody was like, I don't know, it just feels like the highway to nowhere, where everybody was calling it. Well, we currently take 4 lanes of traffic from the west, and we drive them across the connector to a red light.
Yep.
I mean, when does that catch up to you, right? I mean, it's just insanity to think you're going to take a 4-lane highway going 70 miles an hour, and at 8 a.m. you're going to stop it at a red light. Eventually that catches us as our population numbers continue to grow. So, think about our loop and what that has to look like so we get some good flow going again. And it's the reverse coming out of downtown.
Yeah. And increasing the property values around the valley is you take something, for example, like if you were to take Black's Creek, you wrap that all the way around the valley, eventually like wraps into Lake Shore, goes around the lake, comes back around, connects into Chin or State Street or something, and you create an entire loop around the whole valley. Then you have something like Highway 16 that runs north and south, and then you have ID4 obviously going east and west, but creating similar like what Phoenix has with the Target. They're in concept, right? They now have several loops, but creating that circular belt route around the whole valley, being able to get north and south on something better than Eagle Road, and then east-west, the way besides just IE4.
Yeah, and the smart development play is like you have to look at traffic patterns, but you also have to look at wastewater, right? If you can get the traffic pattern, you get the exits in the right spot, you get the highway dealt with, where things are going to flow. But then right behind that is, are we putting in adequate wastewater? Because we can't have housing, which, developments like this don't come without housing. So we got to have that all playing together where we get highway infrastructure, wastewater infrastructure, and then the vertical development can come behind that. And you've seen it just simply like a 10 mile or, that's one of the challenges with Mayfield. It sounds good that, hey, we're going to go work just east of Micron and there's going to be a massive housing development. Well, not quite yet. I mean, it will happen, and it'll happen eventually. And that whole corridor between Mountain Home and the valley will close down, but it's not there yet.
Yeah.
There's some things that have to come together for that to take off.
Yep. We hit just a little bit on your wife. I want to talk a little bit about your wife and your family, and she's amazing, and kind of talk, if you would, a little bit about her and some of the things that she's accomplished and
Sure.
what she does for the women's and children's advocacy, and what you guys have done together, and your ESI Cares Foundation, some of the things that you guys have done to give back to the community.
Yeah. Well, I mean, she grew up and went to Boise State, pretty much grew up in the same 5-mile radius, and, went through the nursing program at Boise State and then went to work in the ER right away. I mean, one of the reasons I met Tommy Alquist was my wife working with him in the ER and said, hey, you got to meet this ER doc. He wants to be a developer. And that's how Tommy and I met. She connected us. So, she was an ER nurse for a long time, and then she went to Gonzaga and got her nurse practitioning degree. And, she worked for about 25 years and still does work. She volunteers for the Genesis Clinic, which is a nonprofit Christian clinic where they treat the working poor. So, for those that are working and hold a job but can't afford to get health care, there's a number of providers that go in and volunteer their time, and she's one of them. And she really likes that aspect of it. She's been part of the Women's and Children's Alliance for a long time. She was the president of the board last year, and she's still on the executive committee now, trying to provide some leadership and guidance through that whole process because the demand continues to grow, unfortunately. And so, as much as we like to talk about how great things are here in the Valley, bad stuff happens. And when you're frontline in the ER, you see a lot of the bad stuff. So it becomes, a heightened awareness of like, hey, even as great as this place is, there is still, a community that needs help. And so that's really how we looked at our foundation. Is we set up a foundation that we do a big golf tournament. We use a lot of our rebates from our vendors, and we just build a fund every year, and then we try to give half of that back in some way. So that's that's been a good thing for us, and we kind of look at all those grants. It was also a way to compartmentalize all the requests coming in, to say, okay, let's make sure it aligns with our core values in terms of what we would want to give to, in terms of our faith and goals that we have and things like that. And this has kind of helped align that. And we have a great group that runs the ESI Cares Foundation, and they've done a couple. I think they're cleaning up the river. They've done one thing already, and they're going to do another one coming up in about 2 weeks. Or we just take volunteers and just walk the riverbanks and pick up as much trash as we can on a Saturday.
Yeah.
So I think, I think we all need that. I think everybody should look at that. And my wife does a really good job of being that sounding board of like, hey, this organization needs our help, and they're doing the right things. Because there's a lot of needy organizations out there, but you have to kind of separate where you want to make an impact. And then the other thing we do as a company, we try to look at, the combination of giving back with what we do for a living. So like, what are the Ronald McDonald House or the Idaho Food Bank or the Boys and Girls Club in Meridian. Our current, what I call passion project is, the Discovery Center of Idaho. So we're helping them. We hope that they get something rolling and, are able to do a bigger build, and then what we like to do is just partner with our vendors and say, this is an organization that needs our help.
Yeah.
But they also need the professional, expertise in engineering and construction to get something built and done right, so that they don't blow their budget by a bunch. And you see a lot of nonprofits do it wrong.
Yeah.
And so we kind of offer that partnership of like, hey, let's try to do this thing as low cost as we can. And we have so many good vendors and partners that are like, yeah, we should help out this group. So we'll typically help them with a rendering. We'll help them, formulate their story, so they have that tool to go in and get grants and pledges and, commitments. And then we try to build the thing as economically as possible, so that, that there's a maximum price they're going to pay. They just know, hey, we're taken care of. And that if ESI says it's going to cost this much, it's not going to cost a penny more.
Yeah.
And I also say sometimes that leads to when we become a .org for a project. I mean, we, a lot of times it doesn't, it's just, you have to look at the purpose, not the dollars.
Yeah. Well, you're making an impact in the community that you live in, right? And we've tried to do the same thing. We started a foundation earlier this year called the Wheeler Foundation. And so for the last several years, we partnered with a number of different nonprofit organizations, and ultimately felt like it was best we start our own. And so this year we're partnering for our VIP gala, which we'll have to make sure that you and Taylor can get a invitation to. But next month in August 5th, we're hosting a dinner, an event for the Man Up Crusade by Zonahue and his team, that they raise funds and awareness for victims of domestic violence, which, as you kind of indicated, unfortunately there are still issues and things like that we deal with here in the community, and trying to give back in a way that helps people that are victims of things like that. And so, we just believe that helping give back to the community and making a difference here, making this a better place to live and work, ultimately benefits everyone. So.
And it does pay off when you do that over time. People recognize, there's a lot of people that are paying attention. When I think particularly in Idaho, I see a lot of companies come from out of state. They come in, they build stuff, they're part of us for the day, and they're gone, and their donations go somewhere else. They don't impact the community. And, we talk about everyone succeeds together. We mean everybody. We want our entire community to succeed while we succeed. We want the end user to be successful. So, I think when we recognize companies like you doing your part, like, that's just more of Idahoans helping Idahoans, right? And,
want to do business.
They're going to get behind them. And we don't, you've seen the growth. We don't always see that.
Yep. Yeah. No, love it. Well, Neil, appreciate you being here. Thank you for, your words of wisdom and things that you've shared. And, you know, one of my intentions in wanting to start this podcast was just, if I was 20 years old, if I was 25 years old, what are things that I wish that I would have known? And if I could have sat down and had a conversation with someone like you or me when I was their age and say like, okay, what should I be doing? What should I learn? How do I connect? How do I go from where I am now to where ultimately I want to be? And so appreciate you taking your time. And
you bet. I mean, there's a lot of people out there and they're younger, starting their career, maybe in a job they don't love. But that's part of that grind you have to go through to your journey, your path. But I would say if there was one thing I'd tell people to do earlier on is build that network. Be intentional about it. And even when it seems impossible, like you and I, you look at like, okay, well, I know a few people, but how aspirational should this get? I mean, that's the sky's the limit. I mean, who do you want to know and who do you want to talk to? And, I don't think you should be starstruck by anybody. At the end of the day, everybody's very much the same. And especially when it comes to top end leaders. And if you're providing some value, they'll spend their time with you. They just will. So build your network.
Love it. Thanks, Neil. Appreciate you.
Okay. Thanks, bud.